Thank you so much. Yeah, so hi, Triangle InfoSeCon. Will be so that's I think for me anyway, Bob is up there, I'm down here.
Yeah,
I'm
Todd's down
Todd.
there.
Bob is our what is your title these days?
Chief data scientist.
Chief, Chief Data Scientist. I'm a research director. We both work here at Rapid7. And yeah, let's jump into this with some inspiring quotes. So basically, we spend a lot of our time worrying about the cybersecurity posture of the internet at large. We know that like it basically is okay. Like it, as the adage goes, the internet is just barely secure enough to do the things it wants to do, and we want we actually want a little bit more buffer space there. So that's why we do these things. But yeah, we will be looking today at how and why exposure happens on the internet. We do that a couple different ways. One, we have this rad project called Project Sonar. This scans the internet, and there's a little asterisk there, but we'll get to that in a bit of how much internet we actually scan. And then on the listening side, we run a network of honeypots all around the world. It's about 150-ish or so these days. They're scattered literally around the globe. They're in a bunch of different cloud hosting providers and some like standalone spots, but those guys do a pretty good job of picking up like really just kind of the background noise of what's going on in malicious and misconfigured space out on the internet. And so taking these together, we're able to have a pretty good and I think very comprehensive survey of the whole internet. Something that was an itch we wanted to scratch about 4 years ago. I think the genesis question was like, how many telnet servers there on the internet anymore? And we looked around and no one was counting them, and so no one that we could find anyway. There was like Internet Census of 2008, I think was the most recent thing we saw, and then there was a Nmap project in like 2012. So all those were getting really old. But we've been pumping these kinds of studies out for the last 4 years or so, and this is the best one yet. So let's jump in.
Yeah, and Todd, we jinxed it. Google Slides has reordered our slides again.
Awesome.
Yeah, I will do my best to work around Google Slides issues that way.
So yeah, sometimes when you have long presentations, Google Slides likes to monkey with them. This is an open issue at this point with Google
Yep.
of like why is this happening? So NICER stands for the National Industry Cloud Exposure Report, and each one of those words has a particular meaning, right? And so we'll go through each one of these in turn. First up is how we measure exposure and what exposure actually means for us. And so exposure for the purposes of this report are dangerous services that really shouldn't be on the internet at all anymore. So these are things like SMB, both the Windows kind and the Linux kind, Samba. Telnet is old and busted and really has no place on the modern internet today. Uh, we're also worried about things like unpatched software. We actually spend a fair amount of time lately, like categorizing vulnerabilities and categorizing like patch releases of like, oh, you should patch this now. You should patch this, as soon as you can. You should patch this in your regular release cycle. What all this assumes is that there's a regular release cycle, which may not be the case for the internet. So that's a bit of a bummer, and we talk about that a lot. Um, we're worried specifically about unencrypted protocols. There's a whole RFC out there called I think the title of it is passive monitoring is an internet threat, and we worry about that. Not only do you lose out on like keeping secrets when you're using a Cleartext protocol, but you lose out on authentication. Like there's no way without cryptography, there's no way to actually tell like the machine you're talking to is actually the machine you're talking to. So we recommend against any of those clear text things on the open internet. And then finally, we look at originators and amplifiers of malicious traffic. So think Memcached is like the current favorite, but there's a few others. Mostly, almost all of them are UDP based. UDP was an idea that happened. UDP is probably not the greatest thing to have on the internet anymore. So
Actually, it is though, right? Because with Quick, it's all over UDP, and HTTP,
I
it's all over
know,
UDP. So like
yeah.
they've made UDP great again. It's good.
Well, I don't know about great, but yeah. So most of those are. It is possible to have UDP protocols that don't act as amplifiers. Just basically anything that responds less than with fewer bytes than the bytes that you send to it. Those are generally okay. And I don't know if you can hear this crazy music going on outside my house right now. Hopefully, Crisp is doing its job.
It's doing a
And
mostly good job.
okay,
Crisp.ai is doing a great job. We
yes,
we we,
our
we
our
plug it every
usual
talk.
plug
Yeah,
here
for
for Crisp.
Crisp.ai.
It is a great noise canceling solution that stops this from happening. So yeah, so what you're looking at here is a map of the internet as we can see it from Sonar. You'll notice it's IPv4 only because if it was IPv6, like this block would be one tiny block up in one corner of the whole IPv6 space. Probably not a pixel big. Um, but in this map, every pixel represents one like class C/24 grouping of machines, what we used to call class C when we had class networking. So each dot represents 255 possible machines, and it is colored from cool to warm depending on how populated that is. So you'll see like there are some parts of the internet that are really dense, and some part are very, very sparse to black. That there's nothing there. And then in addition to that, we have our big red angry opt-out boxes. Apparently, it's someone's job, some places, to look
Many
at scan
places,
traffic,
many places.
many
Yes.
places, to look at scan traffic and say like, no, 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 don't scan us. Sonar is actually pretty easy to opt out of compared to almost everything else. Where we publish our two, I think two now, source IPs that Sonar come from. You can see it usually in the traffic of some notion of how to opt out of it. Um, I don't like it when people opt out. It hurts our visibility, obviously, and we are in fact good guys and we go and publish our stuff. If you're opting out of this kind of good guy scan, you're pretty much leaving it only to the bad guys to scan you. And there are you can see that's scattered around there too. Two of the big blocks though are sources of sadness for us. But altogether, out of the 3 billion and change possible routable IPv4s, we find about 330 million uh, devices that are responsive on IPv4. And so these are usually servers, sometimes some IoT junk, but you find anything. Go to Shodan and you'll find anything. But don't go to Shodan. Go to go to our stuff instead. As far as the national part, the one way that we've been able to cut this down to make it a little more digestible is we group everything up by country. And our definition of country is basically anything that has an ISO 2 character code. So like California is not a country and Scotland's not a country, according to the ISO people. That's not my call. But basically, anything that has a two character code is a country or a nation for us, and so we'll use those terms interchangeably, which of course pains me as a geography nerd, but that's the way we go. It's pretty accurate. It's about 96-ish% or so uh, uh, of accuracy there when we're dealing at a country level. We can get down to like state level or county level or town level, like that gets a lot less accurate. But I'm pretty confident in our attribution there. And so what we find is that yes, do post questions. We find that generally speaking, if you have more IP space in your country, you will have more exposure of stuff because stuff will tend to fill that space. Most countries are in the neighborhood of about 4 or 5% of their IP space is populated by a server. Most people's IP space is client side, which is the kind of stuff that we will only see on the Heisenberg side, on the listening side. So we wouldn't count that in some of our stuff. And another, I guess, knock-on effect of categorizing these down by country is that we find dangerous services and configurations that actually do have a real impact on national security, which we'll dive into in a little bit on that. But we can say things with this data of like, hey, Venezuela, you are you are exposing some bad stuff, and you probably ought to fix that. We're reaching out more and more to regional certs and trying to help them figure out like where their exposures are. And so I think more data is better than less, obviously. And then when we take all our exposure data, split it up by country, and then we are then able to rank countries against each other. And we can see things like what is the most exposed country, which is a question I can answer on the next slide, whatever Google thinks is next. Um, and so, yeah, US, we're number one when it comes to exposure, as you might expect. US and China are number one and number two. It's not like an order of magnitude difference there. We have similar levels of server exposure out on the internet. And this, like I said, this covers things like dangerous protocols, unpatched services, unencrypted services, things like that. But you can see like here in this top 20 is basically every major trading partner to the U.S. and every major adversary to the U.S. Are all kind of in this top 20 in the top 20. When you get past 20, things get a little more interesting. You can also see like this is not a population map, like the population of computers, nor is it a map of like population of people. We can see that some places just have more exposure than you might expect, given how many devices they have. So, so that's all very interesting. It is bad everywhere. How?
Wow. And yeah, however, that's not the slide that's supposed to be there. Oh,
Nope.
wow.
Yeah, let's deep dive.
Yeah, so we're gonna take you through like to give you some to make it more concrete to everybody. We're gonna take the national, bring it down to an actual national level. We're gonna talk about Canada and the U.S. and we're talking about Canada just because it's my annual appeal to have them annex us. I live in Maine. It'd be kind of nice to actually have a sane country to actually be part of again. So we found between Canada and the United States just around like 35.5 million things, whether they're servers or routers or switches or cameras or whatever they happen to be out there. That's between the two. We actually found a ton of stuff actually. But what's there isn't as important as like what's on there. And when we use sonar, we can do lightweight banner grabs so we don't break anything, but we can use those to tease out maybe what's running on those things. And if we know what's running on those things and we can say what version is running on those things, we can then take that and do all sorts of database mappings to figure out like what that is and what CVEs are available to it, and then what of those CVEs which ones were in our definition of high 8.5 or above. And so I kind of focused on that bottom row. And across those 35 million devices, we found a combined almost 14 million high vulnerabilities. So these are like remote code execution, maybe like yesterday's one that was out there for WebLogic as an example. So these are things where folks can either get on, do very bad things to them. They could be very critical DDoS. That's easy to do for the particular server. There's a number of different things with those high ones. So like having that many devices out there, it's not necessarily 14 million devices because some have a lot more than one high vulnerability on them, is just not that great. But however, every time I start to talk about high vulnerabilities, like Mr. Know-it-all says, they're not the only important thing. So Todd, like, could you explain to me again, because I still don't get it, why you care about medium vulnerabilities?
So the high set vulnerabilities are great, right, for bad guys. They're CVSS 8.5 and above is how we class that. We're a little more discerning even than the normal CVSS stuff, which I think cuts it off at 7.5. But like 8.5 and up is almost always straight shot remote execution. Sounds bad. But the medium vulnerability, the medium severity vulnerabilities, which is basically everything between I think 4.5 and 8.5, or 8.4, is those almost all of them are some kind of info leak of something good, and that something good can be usernames and passwords. It can be database contents, anything you can read, but not necessarily write to. So while it's not a straight shot to remote code execution, in a lot of cases, these medium set vulnerabilities are one step away, or maybe at a most two steps away from remote code execution. So like, you know, classing them the low severity vulnerabilities that okay, like those tend to be merely DOSes, you know, or info leaks of things that aren't maybe very secret, like things like lists of usernames or username enumeration bugs would be in that low category. But yeah, like when I worry a lot about the medium vulns, because it only often takes just a little bit of automation to turn them into something like weaponized and good for bad guys.
So I still think that the high ones may be a little bit more important, but we'll disagree on
Sure.
that one.
And again, you know, patch those yesterday,
And
patch the
and
mediums tomorrow.
and it isn't so, and the vulnerabilities are real, right? So like when we look at certain services like SMB, like that's how we're talking about before. This is we found between again Canada and the US around 200,000 of those still. It's a caveat because we're going to kind of show you some recent numbers. This is from our study back in April. We got some more current information coming up in a minute for y'all. This is, so if anyone doesn't know about, Eternal Blue and WannaCry, you've been in a hole for the past couple of years.
Are you at this conference?
Yeah, yeah, seriously. So like these things should not be on the internet. And unfortunately, like we find 200,000 of these things, and it's important because the attackers are still going after those. So on the Heisenberg side of things, when we look at the honeypots, we can detect what's Eternal Blue and what's not Eternal Blue based. And honestly, since WannaCry and Eternal Blue came out, we've only really see Eternal Blue based attacks anymore. And we see potentially so this was in April of this year, almost 10 million like exploit attempts coming from like things in Vietnam. Like there's a lot of them are just devices, like they for some reason they buy a lot of like the generic white box garbage IoT and like they put it everywhere and it is what it is. And then we also see full protocol connections come as well too. So after they try to do things with Eternal Blue on there, it's almost the same distribution that's out there. And this is regular. Like we see this absolutely regularly. I do a lot of briefings with customers about this, and like I always show the current SMB stats, and they're always pretty high out there. So attackers really want to go after these things. They perfect their attacks on the internet, and then if you still haven't bothered patching it internally, they go and take over stuff internally. And if they're still doing this, it means it's working. That means people still haven't updated and haven't patched internally as well as externally. So if you still haven't bothered to take care of Eternal Blue in your networks, it's really important that they actually kind of go do that. But that's not the only thing that's bad. So a couple other things we don't like to see on the internet is RDP. It may have been kind of neat to be able to RDP to your servers 10 years ago. Now there's lots of other better ways to more securely kind of do something like that. And we found almost 1 million Microsoft RDP servers between Canada and the United States. Bluekeep. Now, so here's one of those things where here was a high vulnerability, and like I'm Mr. High Vulnerability, and I was completely wrong about Bluekeep because I thought for sure Bluekeep was going to be like one of the worst things that ever happened to security. And Todd also, for Mr. Medium Vulnerabilities, cared about Bluekeep, and he was also wrong too. So we were wrong about this. Most of all of us were wrong about this. We do see Bluekeep attacks in our honeypots, a very tiny amount of them, and they're all kind of really low grade stuff. So if anyone has properly weaponized Bluekeep, they're keeping it a secret, and it's working great for them, and they haven't been caught yet about doing those things.
Yeah, it's a squirrely exploit.
Yeah. And like Citrix as well. So this has been the year of remote access vulnerability compromises. Citrix was terrible back in January. There was a mitigation released in December of last year, then a patch late in January for it. We're finally up to about 90% patched in between the US and Canada for the 25,000 exposed Citrix servers. Yeah, I mean, it took 6 months to get to that way though. So like folks may not realize like nobody patches really well or nobody patches really fast. We've actually been trying to get more folks to patch by reaching out to various authorities to help them understand the nature of what this is, because Citrix not being patched does things like what happened in Germany about a month ago. So it has potential to be very devastating, and it still has that potential too. Kind of go back to the like vulnerabilities that may not just be remote code. This is, with Memcached, there are still like thousands of Memcached servers on the internet. It's a really cool little database for doing key value store lookups and really efficient. It's also really efficient for use in DDoS and UDP mode if you haven't patched it properly. You might remember from a few years ago when a lot of us were trying to get work done, a couple of ne'er-do-wells, really, used Memcached in one of the largest, if not still the largest DDoS attack ever, taking out like, GitHub so you can't get work done and a bunch of other things. Todd, you were trying to get work done too then, right? Back too?
I was absolutely not. I was trying to watch Netflix and play
Yeah,
Twitter, and those things
yeah,
also went offline after
yeah.
the Memcached attack. Turns out, critical infrastructure just kind of sneaks up on you there, and sometimes we run into like one service to rule them all, and the Dyn DNS outage because of the Memcached attack knocked a lot of things off, work and play alike.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'd put Netflix in the terms of critical infrastructure, but
Netflix
some of
is
us,
absolutely critical.
yeah, we'll agree to
I'm in a
disagree on that.
pandemic. I need my Netflix.
One of the last protocols we're going to pick on for this section is Telnet. So yeah, Telnet is still a thing, folks. There's millions of them on the internet. It's absolutely crazy. I'm still dismayed to this day that folks still use Telnet on some terrible things out there, including routers. So we found about 300,000 Telnet servers between Canada and the United States, almost 7,000 on actual routers, like not just home routers, not just D-Link things, not just DDWRT. We're talking like real, honest to goodness, like carrier class routers out there, mostly with regional ISPs. So like 1,000 of those are actually in ISPs as well too. And like what we did is made a word cloud of like where we found a lot of these ones. So some of these, like for the Verizon ones, they're going to be routers that are like on-prem for a particular organization that just happens to be connected to the internet through Verizon. There's a number of other ones out there. There's a lot of regional ones, both in Canada and the US, that their entire infrastructure is basically enabled with Telnet. And honestly, if you got Telnet enabled, you're probably not watching for credential stuffing attacks on those devices either. And forget the fact that there is snooping capability depending on where you might actually sit with this. And to just kind of show you like that these were real things, like kind of picked a couple IP addresses between Canada and the US like at random. They thankfully happen to be MikroTik. It's one of the worst routers ever made by man. It's really, actually, they're really great routers. I have one sitting over on my desk over there. They're super fast. They're highly configurable, and they can't seem to make one not vulnerable. And people that put them on the internet seem to have no clue what they're doing. So they do things like enable Telnet, and then also, as you can see from the version numbers, not patch them. If you were to look up those versions, again, against what you see in MikroTik shop, they're not there. These are a favorite of attackers, and a lot of Telnet's not the only way they get to them. There's lots of other ones. There have been a number of these cryptojacking campaigns that they basically stick cryptojackers on the device itself because they're kind of powerful devices, or they'll put them on the proxy component of it so that whenever you surf through it, it injects JavaScript that mines for them as well too. So it's really terrible. And as you can see, our friends over at Digital Shadows this year released a really great report talking about the number of credentials available on the dark web. And there's about, to their estimate, about 15 billion stolen credentials that can be tried against these things. No one's monitoring these things. These things are just out there and garbage. So this is what we're talking about, critical infrastructure. Attackers could sufficiently get on enough of these things to cause some serious damage to the internet infrastructure in any given country. And we're not the only countries that actually have this problem. So like this is kind of all over the place.
Yeah,
But it's bad. But it's bad. So like the
bad
slide before.
everywhere.
But it's bad everywhere. Go ahead, Todd.
But and it is right. Like so, we've got almost 600,000 SMB servers up on the internet. Closing in on 3 million Telnet servers. And then we even see like a lot of that Cleartext email stuff. So that's like POP, IMAP, SMTP on a couple different ports. SMTP is a little bit of a worry. All of these like have some kind of start TLS component to it, but start TLS is kind of weak sauce when it comes to like trying to encrypt because you kind of have to take it on an article of faith that the thing that you're hitting is actually the thing that you expect. And also, mail clients just are kind of bad at failing correctly when start TLS doesn't work. So we start getting so anyway, we have a lot of clear text, a lot of stuff that shouldn't be on the internet here. And it is bad, except it turns out things were, and a little bit are getting better when it comes to exposure. Generally speaking, SMB has gone down year over year between the same measuring period in 2019 compared to 2020. We lost a whole bunch of SMB servers, about 115,000 of those. Telnet similarly is going down. and things that we like SSH is going up. Now, like with another asterisk, two asterisks on that one. Whereas, SSH is great if you're using it to replace your telnet, like good step there. But also you have to maintain your SSH. And so that means keeping up on your patches, using an authentication mechanism that's not just easily brute forceable, doing, black holing things that have that try and fail, right? Like a whole bunch of times. Like you should be able to notice this kind of automatically. This middle bit here, the black arrows, these changes are a little bit too small for us to really be confident about them. Our error bars are right around 4%. For you scan and you scan again, and we can expect to see like even just like with very little time in between, like about a 4% difference either way. So basically everything POP3 S and above we're very confident of. The lower levels on the things in that middle section, not it's in the error bars, right? So maybe it's something, but it's probably not significant enough to get too excited about.
And if the slide gods are with us, hey, they are. Look at that. So
Oh yeah.
it's kind of fun playing random slides. So for just this is the first time we've done this. So for you folks and specifically this audience, we want to just give you a better view of what this looks like getting better wise. So we kind of broke out like 4 of the protocols VNCs on 2 different ports because they're used differently by different folks in different ways. So one of the good news is like for at least Canada wise, like RDP has gone down and VNC, at least on the default port, has sort of gone down. What's a little disconcerting is that we've seen an uptick in SMB and an uptick in Telnet. The SMB one appears to be because some ISP blocks that were doing the actual SMB blocking may have accidentally turned those blocks off. To have that kind of pop-up happen on there. I don't think suddenly that many.
We've seen that over and over, right? Like we've seen this
Yeah,
in at least one other country that
yeah,
we're working with right
this is
now,
true.
which is
The,
weird. Like I
the,
don't know how you fat finger that.
Yeah, I mean, it's just or maybe it's someone telnetting into their routers and removing those blocks for them because
There's
the telnet is
that.
set up as well too, right? What's a bit more disconcerting is the RDP kind of going back to normal of back in May of 2019. This actually had gone down. We were really thrilled to see RDP go down, and now we're kind of seeing it go back up. And it may be due to the extended, remote work that everyone actually has to go do. There are way better ways to remote into a system than RDP, folks. If you guys are doing that with your work, please tell them not to do that and put it behind a VPN that you patch because people aren't
Yeah,
patching
and just by the way, this is RDP like straight RDP. This is not RDP gateway, which is like an
right,
HTTPS thing, right?
right.
Which even that would be better
Yep.
than just kind of straight naked RDP. So.
Yeah, and thankfully Telnet has gone down and it's mostly stayed down here with a little bit of a rise, and VNC has gone way down as well. So a lot of that's due to I think some Macs not by defaulting to screen sharing automatically because there's a lot of Macs that show up in the VNC as well too because that's the remote access. So we wanted to give you a picture, kind of show you and just kind of show you how it does vary from country to country. So that's why the rankings kind of show up the way that they show up. And if we re-rank them now, I don't think Canada would be number 1. I think we'd still probably be number 1 in that, but it might fall further up on that top 10 list if it were actually there.
Yeah, and so all this is to say that we expected things like what's happened lately to be kind of front and center when pandemic and lockdown actually hit the US and Canada. So that would have been middle March, right? We were expecting a lot of doom and gloom, a lot of like just people throwing open the ACLs and just like letting fly with whatever on the internet. And that didn't really happen, but so while the internet is resistant to like I guess those big shocking changes, it's this creeping change born of just I guess frustration and boredom that is I think now causing like we're seeing more of the things that we were expecting to see before, right? So like more of that opening up of the floodgates because people got work to do, right? And security for most people is job 2, when it comes down to it. So now let's move on to the cloud time. Oh, we're doing good on time. Cool. So the cloud. If you're like me, you believe that the cloud was a beautifully architected region of the internet that
He's
is
really adorable to work with, folks. He's really
staffed
adorable
by
to work with.
professionals who know very well what they're doing. They've been at this for 10 or 20 years. And everything is run by angels, and there's none of that like legacy crap that we have on the rest of the internet, right? Right? Um, well, turns out, yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, turns out it's not. Turns out there's a ton of lift and shift going on in the cloud. So what this means is that when enterprises namely are deciding to move their stuff to the cloud, that's literally what they're doing. They're copying and pasting their old busted stuff over to new hardware in someone else's data center and making basically no changes in the meantime. So we can see, for example, here that OVH Cloud, which is a very popular cloud hosting provider in Europe, and they're located in France, but they have a lot of European content there. They write some pretty excellent documentation on how to set up a pretty insecure protocol. So a little bit of a bummer there. I would like to see, and I know Bob agrees that uh, we would expect these as a service vendors to do a little bit more to push their customers to the right thing. And that means like, hey, maybe not FTP, but like STP or SCP or FTPS or SFTP configured the right way, or rsync over SSH, or like there's a million ways, right? Or HTTPS, why not? Like there are a million ways to transfer files over the internet that don't rely on FTP, which is like, I don't know if you've ever watched FTP traffic, but it is almost always in the clear. It's kind of a pain to configure because it's passive versus active, and it's a weird rickety protocol from the 70s that is secretly using Telnet under the covers. So maybe not FTP anymore, guys. Okay, how about that?
Yeah, like if we could get rid of FTP and Telnet, this would be a good year, but it's not going to happen.
Now, as far as the industry bits go, we've compiled a list of about 1,500 and change. It's like 1,503, 1,504, something like that, um, of companies that are publicly traded. They're at the top of their respective country indices, and they will tend to have all of the money and all of the talent. And we want to take a look at like how are they doing things, um, mainly because they're so superlative like this. We figure again, they're doing it right, right? Surely. um, we do see, unfortunately, though, high severity vulnerabilities. These are the CVSS 8.5 and up across pretty much all industries that we survey. The ones that fall into that like lower category at the bottom. I'm not going to worry too much about right now. So things like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So on as far as this slide goes, we see that the ones that have big clusters of vulnerabilities between that 10 and 100 mark are the industries that we also see in breach headlines a lot. So things like telecoms, financial services, retail outfits, and healthcare, specifically in pharma. And boy, pharma, we're kind of relying on you right now.
Just a bit, just a little bit.
We've been
Yeah.
putting up with your garbage for years, and this is the reason why, because we need you now. And so, like, there are outliers for sure on these that have like in that 5,000, 8,000 high severity vulnerability range in there, but like it's a little concerning that like all the telecom, all the money, all the drugs, and all the stuff we buy uh, are this exposed. And again, these are household brands, worldwide household brands.
I just need to make another comment about Google. Like at 2 o'clock, this slide deck was perfect. I actually ran through it at 2 o'clock today, and this is really frustrating.
Oh, so it goes. So, that is most of the findings there, and so we'll just like this is review time, right? One of the key findings is that if we see it on the internet, we want it to be encrypted. We're not going to be super crazy and say like everything at rest also has to be encrypted, all your devices at home have to be encrypted, all that. But like if it's touching the internet directly, it really ought to be encrypted. There's no real good reason not to anymore. We have Moore's law working for us here, where we have the computation power and the even the storage oomph and the bandwidth to like do cryptography right. Like this is not that difficult to do. It's just a matter of doing it millions of times. So that's what we want. As far as service deployment is going, we see Like I said, we see over a half million SMB servers out on the internet. 200,000 rsync servers. That's like plain old naked rsync. So all of the data in all of these sure, most of this is going to be backup traffic. So like all your backups are being exposed here. Maybe not.
Yeah,
Um,
and actually with the rsync, a lot of it is home QNAP kind of devices, like basically home NAS or small business NAS devices. So not necessarily backup, they got their NAS on the internet for some
yeah.
reason.
Yep. Hey, works for me. And 3 million MySQL servers, just straight up. Like we have a whole class of vulnerabilities that is just about like tricking a web server into letting you talk to a database. Those are called SQL injection bugs. These are servers that like no SQL injection required. It's just SQL. Like you can just use your SQL client and go to town. That's a little crazy. So like I think we need to be doing better at this, kind of across the board. Some countries, again, are better than others at this, but when it comes down to it, like we all need to like really take that commitment of routinely scanning our own networks to figure out what's on the internet, because almost all of these, like I can't most of those SMB servers, the vast majority of them are probably there by accident. And so it really is just take a moment to scan the thing, see what you see. You should see your expected stuff and not see your unexpected stuff, obviously, right? So, but that was bad. It's good in the fact that we've seen this decrease over the measured period. Now, some of them, as we've gone over here, are starting to creep back up again through complacency, uh, but I'm pretty happy with what we've seen in the decrease. And it's not because like individual enterprises have gotten religion about this. Almost all of this is due to ISPs kind of dropping the hammer on some of these protocols. Like when WannaCry and Eternal Blue happened, we saw a big drop in SMB, like total SMB population, but then that kind of just stabled out, right? Like it was like a big solid 30% drop right out of the gate. And then we saw this long plateau of like, oh, we're not losing any more. And now we're starting to see like big chunks just kind of disappear from the internet, which is great. Console access is kind of the name of the game of why we have an internet. This was kind of the design goal back in the 70s of like I want to be able to type commands here and have them process over there and give me my results back over here. Like that was the deal. Um, but we've moved on from the time where you knew everybody literally on the internet. There are lots of strangers out there. Not all of them have your best interest in heart. We have data centers today, like physical data centers that have physical doors that have physical locks on them, and so we need something equivalent out on the internet. It's not cool to like just let strangers walk up to your keyboards. You know what I mean? So hopefully, when you guys are deploying and maintaining your enterprises, this console access, so things like SSH, RDP, and VNC, are safely tucked behind a VPN or some other kind of proxy system where there's some kind of second authentication factor there, because there's 15 billion creds out there, and people are using them.
It is a little disconcerting that Todd and I both learned today, or is it yesterday, that a very large cloud services provider in their default training
Uh-huh.
shows you they actually tell you to set up insecurely, I'll add RDP for accessing your Windows remote servers in their environment. We're not going to say who that is, but yeah, it's a little disconcerting that it's 2020 and we still have folks like that doing stuff like that.
Yeah, and they should know better. I mean, it's just kind of crazy. Um, as far as software maintenance goes, like, boy, I'd love to see more reasonable, more routine, boring patching going out on the internet. Like I said earlier, we do spend a lot of time kind of nitpicking over, you know, which number of days is appropriate for how when you should have this patch out. When in reality, like a lot of people don't have a monthly or quarterly patch schedule. They patch as if it's a surprise every time, and that's just not sustainable. It leads to burnout starters on the humans that are dealing with these panicky events all the time. But yeah, like what we are hoping that people come to the realization that all software ships with bugs. Like there is no software that's useful that didn't have bugs at some point. Some of those bugs are security bugs, and so patching is just kind of should be like that normal boring thing. The fire and forget of like drop something on the internet and forget about it. That is a recipe for tears.
Yeah, and like so, like yeah, and you're lamenting about like not a regular patch schedule, while there are some SSH servers that are as old as my youngest kid, who's
Mhm.
14. There should never be 14-year-old software on the internet, like nowhere.
No 14-year-olds on the internet
Yeah, well, no, yeah, so no
or
14-year-olds, yeah,
or
or
software.
software, yeah. So like this is, it's disconcerting to see like this much drag out there, and it's about to get a lot worse because PHP 7.2 goes away in terms of support in this coming month, and there's going to be a whole bunch of more bad PHP on the internet. So this is bad everywhere, guys. It's just bad everywhere.
Well, and there's a lot of like end of life windows right now, and
Yep.
now there are certain components that are also reaching end of life.
Yeah,
Things like
like Exchange 2010. Yeah.
so anyway, that is nicer in a nutshell. Now, if your appetite has been whet, I encourage you to read the nicer report. It is kind of long, and so I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. It comes in about 100 and a little under 140 pages, but don't let that scare you off because most of that is like a protocol deep dive, basically, of like what a protocol is, and how it looks on the internet. But every protocol starts off with like a TLDR section of like what it is, how many are there, the kinds of vulnerabilities that are normal there that we have seen in the past, some micro advice of like don't do this or do this but do it this way, things like that, alternatives to using that protocol, and kind of the status, like where's the directionality of this protocol going. Those TLDRs are exactly this long, right? It's like maybe a quarter page, very easy to get through. So it kind of preps you up for it. And then every protocol has some at a glance comparisons across countries and across cloud providers. So, for example, SMB is quite popular in the US and Russia, and then it drops off fairly significantly from there. You'll notice that there's no China on here. China has figured this out of like, let's not let the rest of the world come in and stomp all over our SMB servers. It's not because that they are, Chinese companies are particularly good at this. It's, great firewall here. So I'm sure that if you were scanning from within China, you'd probably find, I'm positive you'll find plenty of good SMB in there. But from the outside, like China's really taken the lead on this and taken like a solid technical leadership role with, that great firewall that we otherwise complain about quite a bit.
There is no good SMB type.
Good for bad guys. Every protocol tells its own story. We take a look at Microsoft SQL Server, um, and weirdly, in Turkey, they do Microsoft SQL Server a little bit more, a little bit more liberally than most, I'd say. Apparently, the way to do Microsoft SQL Server in Turkey is to fire it up, put every version on the internet, and never replace it.
Never ever take it off. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I think our current hypothesis. Wait, actually, what I think you came up with this, right? It was about some IT technical institute in Istanbul, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's the Istanbul Center for Database Sciences or something, and this is how they're teaching it.
Yeah, it's
To
just
just
crazy.
kind of drop it out there, once a semester and never delete the old ones.
Yeah,
Um,
and we have there's a number of mysteries like this in each, not every
there's
section, but
yeah, there's
there's a
about
good
20,
number.
I think.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
if I mean we have open data at rapid7.com. You can dig into a lot of this data there if you want to, and if you figure out what some of these mysteries are, we'd love to hear. Or if you know what they are already, we'd love to hear. It's piqued our interest a lot, but we just wrote 140 pages with stuff. So we're not actually going to be looking at this again for a little
We don't have just scanning the stats here. We also have what we're listening to. So, for example, in when it comes to RDP, we're looking at how many times do we see the blue keep exploits, and how many times do we see RDP sessions established, and when we look at that from the totals and then uniques as well. So we're able to give a pretty good picture of like what attacker traffic looks like for this stuff too. It's not just what is out there, but what is actually getting scanned for and probed and attacked, which is pretty good. And then every section ends with some practical guidance. Again, they're pretty short. These sections tend to be about a half a page or so, but they're targeting specific audiences that we hope to reach with NICER, and that's IT and IT security teams, cloud providers, and government cybersecurity agencies. So like we've actually had some pretty good experiences with the govies. They tend to be fairly receptive to this stuff. They are hungry for this kind of data because there's legislation in many countries that specifically prohibit them from looking for things like this, which is a little crazy, but I guess it's kind of some kind of anti-fascism thing or whatever. When governments start making lists of things, that tends to be a bad idea. So happy to make those lists for them. But yeah, so if you're interested, go to rapid7.com/nicer and go take a look. We're also publishing each protocol breakdown as a separate blog post. So if you go to blog.rapid7.com, you can read those. Maybe in smaller chunks. We've actually gotten some engagement off of the blog for those by serializing that, so that's been nice. And then if you're interested in your own data and what we're scanning on your behalf, swing on over to opendata.rapid7.com. It's free. It's free, right?
Yep, it's free. Yeah. And
Free with like some very light authentication there,
yeah,
where
we
just
yeah we
protocol level
unlike
details.
certain other scanners, we at least make some attempt to make sure you're not like a horrible bad
Hmm.
guy. And also, if your organization would like us to do that work for you and say, hey, this is what your internet profile looks like, if you hit up research at rapid7.com, we do that for free.
Yep.
So we'll basically do, I guess, what the cool kids call these days a tax service enumeration or whatever. It really isn't that. It's way more detailed than that, and it isn't as judgmental as that. And it's a lot of
That
good
is
info.
judgmental.
So it's a research at rapid7.com if your organization would like to participate in something like that too.
Yep. And that's what we got. So we have a little bit of time for questions. Let them
Okay.
rip.
Well, if anybody has any questions, feel free to write it in. I do have one question. Now, you mentioned lift and shift when people go from on-prem to the cloud.
Uh-huh.
What things could they, I mean, obviously this is the best time to at least look at your security practices before you migrate everything up. Um,
You'd
but
expect.
but a cost is one of the things, obviously. What is the best way about going about that?
I mean,
Um,
so like, so there are a couple of different things. The one thing Todd and I were looking at is, the fact that folks seem to stand up their own services, whether it's a database service or a key value store, or even, something a bit more involved, when any one of the main cloud providers actually has a really good turnkey service that you can just use. And
Hmm.
sure, it's more expensive usually to actually use those services than to stand up your own thing on a piece of virtual hardware. But they've taken care of most of the security related to it. They've taken care of like all the base default configurations. So I would say, instead of lifting and shifting, look at the portfolio of things that you're trying to accomplish, whatever business process you're trying to automate or whatever it is you're trying to do in that space, and see what you can rely on that cloud provider for versus just do the same thing that you've been doing, just keeping doing it as horribly in the cloud. And like literally, like to specifically call out Microsoft and Amazon, because they are the two biggest ones out there for this. I mean, they have some great services. Like you are way better off using Microsoft's SQL Server hosted that they do, because it's almost impossible to put it on the internet. Like you have to go through a lot of pains to get it on there. So like really investigate the services that these providers have, and don't just try replicating what you've got internally, or there should. That may be the quickest and easiest thing, but you're just transferring all of your security problems that you've gotten internally out now to the internet. It's just not cool to do that.
yeah, and you're
Okay.
building in like this maintenance tax. So like even though the cost is, it's going to cost a little more to go with the offered services, like you end up, it's all return on investment, right? So you might be saving money in the front, but actually spending it more on the
Back in.
maintenance on the back end. So
Okay. Anyone have any questions at all? Feel free to get them little fingers typing.
It's a,
Okay.
it's a lot to expect people to be engaged on a Friday afternoon.
I know, right? And we just had our hacker meetup last night, so I'm still feeling kind of the effects of
There you go.
that. It was online, of course. We don't meet in person anymore.
Okay, awkward pause is passed. Okay, well, we'd
Gotta
like to thank.
wait a little bit longer than you want.
Well, we'd like to thank Bob and Todd for their contribution to this conference. This has been really good information. In fact, yeah, some of the panelists, I mean, some of the guests are actually saying that great presentation, interesting information. Thanks for the talk. So you're definitely appreciated, and we thank you for your time. If there's not anything else, we can go ahead and close up. But remember, you can always go to the lounge. We have a lot of people have exhibits and things of that nature out there. You can feel free to go talk, meet up with people, talk that way if you like. And we'll be back out here again at 4:30 for another round of this. Okay. So until then, you'll enjoy.
Thanks, everyone.
Cool. Go vote.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Later.
Okay, welcome back. For all those who are coming in, we are still at a Hitchhiker's Guide to 2020. And we have our next guest that's going to do a demo for you, okay? He's from Rapid7 as well, Dara Delaney, okay, along with Bob Rudis and Todd Beardsley. They'll probably be attending later on. But right now, we have Dara Delaney. I'm going to put it into his hands, okay? If you have any questions, wait till after the demo, and then you can start typing them in. We'll take it from there, okay? So right now is in Dara Delaney's hands.
Thank you. Welcome all, and thanks for joining me on this demo. So I'm going to talk about the Inside Network Sensor. I work myself as the product manager for network data. I used to work for a company called Netfort, and we got acquired by Rapid7 some time ago. And over the last while, we've developed what we call the Inside Network Sensor and integrated it into the platform. And the reason for why do we even need a sensor in the first place? We wanted to kind of complete this SOC visibility triad. Obviously, we had SIM, we had everything in there with log search. We had endpoints and agents, and we wanted network traffic analysis, so to give customers options no matter what way they wanted to gather data. And just before I launch into the demo, just a little bit of background. The reasons customers were looking for sensors and network traffic analysis, a lot of it revolved around visibility. I want visibility into my traffic. I want to see what's happening on my network. I need flexibility because nowadays I work from home, cloud. I need to put sensors in different types of networks because they wanted to find bad things happening on their network, whether it was an attack, whether it was just something like data exfiltration. They needed to find suspicious activity. And if they did already have events, so that they may have maybe an intrusion detection system far enough, is there any other data we could put with that investigation to really give us a good understanding of what happened and what was the scope of that attack? So what we did is we came up with the Inside Network Sensor, and it's a lightweight software installation. Customers can download it from within our product. Lightweight, they install it on a Linux host. So at the customer side, the sensor captures network traffic, whether it's spam port, mirror port, virtual, there's options now in cloud. And there's 4 components internally. We got a comms engine, which communicates to the platform. We got a configuration service. As customers change settings in their sensor, that configuration service makes sure everything's aligned with versions and configuration versions. But the business end of things is with our flow analysis engine, and we also run SecuriCAD intrusion detection. But we wanted to be a bit different with intrusion detection. So our rule set comes there. It's a curated rule set from our managed detection and response team. And the sensor itself it's not a product in itself. It feeds the platform. And today the main consumers is Inside IDR, which is what the demo will be. But the data also goes through analytics engines to find suspicious activity and gets presented to the customer. Also, the sensors you'll see, you don't need to manage them all individually. Everything's done via platform management. So deployments today, a couple of just metrics on this. So this is the traditional way people would look at traffic analysis. They have a core switch, they may have a sensor, they want to plug a sensor in, use a span port. That's been around for a long time, and it's still a popular choice with customers. Probably around 1/3 of our sensors are deployed this way on a within a data center connected to span and mirror ports. But what's proved really popular in the last couple of months is deploying virtually, whether it's on ESX or Hyper-V. There's lots of different options on when you go virtual, whether you use port groups, you can use distributed switches. There's a lot of options in there. And what's starting to gain traction now is, okay, I no longer have an on-prem presence. Everything's in the cloud. And the good news is, yes, there's options in the cloud when it comes to traffic analysis, whether it's with VPC Traffic Mirroring and others. So putting sensors in there, it's early days, but certainly we're going to see a lot of growth in that area. And that's why we went software. We're not an appliance company. We went with software because we want to give customers flexibility. So let's get into the actual demo itself. So what you're looking at here, if you're not overly familiar with our products, at the high level, we have our data collection management. So all of the different ways we can collect data. It's kind of platform home, kind of high level in the product before we start looking at data. As I mentioned, you don't need to go around managing every sensor logging on to individually. All your sensors you deploy are available here in the sensors tab. So we get the vital information such as the host name, the IP address, whether span is on or off. Now this is a demo environment, it's not getting live traffic, but in a live situation, what your CPU memory is like, how much traffic we're processing. And if you, let's say you've got a dusty old PC and install the software and expect it to do multi-gigabits per second of traffic, your drop rate's probably going to be high. So we may expose all of these vital statistics to the customer. And you can then go behind the scenes if you wanted to tweak a sensor. You could do things like, okay, I want to switch off a particular feature. Or maybe I want to ignore traffic from a certain maybe source or a certain subnet. So you can put a BPF filter on. If you didn't want the sensor, let's say, processing traffic associated with database synchronization or backup traffic, or so you can put a filter here on each sensor. So all your management is done through data collection management. Once you deploy sensors, they'll start sending you data to the platform. And let's take a look at that now, what it looks like. So the first area, or first way we're going to look at this data is through our log search engine. Now, the sensor, it sends 4 distinct types of data to the platform. The first, let's just take a look, is DNS metadata. So for some time now, Rapid7 has had the option to ingest DNS log files. It's a very important component of inside IDR, retrieving DNS information. And customers were using it to pull DNS logs from their local servers. But we had a big problem. If devices on a network were using external DNS servers, whether it be Google or something else, we had no access to those logs. So a sensor now feeds our DNS log set with DNS information, which it captures passively. And I just got a couple of queries. Let me just grab them here. Rather than kind of looking at low-level log information, I got a few queries here pre-built just to show you the importance of the sensors approach. So what I have here is a pretty simple query. I'm going to group all of this DNS data by what DNS servers in use, and we'll take a look at the top private domains. It'll make more sense when we run this query. So what this tells us is these are all of the active DNS servers on the network. And in my case, they're all external. So it's the sensor that's providing this detail. I can then see, well, what are the top level domains that are being queried here? Let's extend the time range out a bit, get a bit more data. Yeah, so these are all the DNS servers. These are what they're resolving. And then if I want to go in here then and take a look at, well, I was looking at Microsoft.com, I get to see the actual DNS query itself. So we have what workstation, what user, we've got what they queried, what type of query it was. So one function of the sensor is to capture what we call this DNS metadata. And it's used not only to run reports like I'm doing here, but we use this information as well for attribution. So if we see an IP address, we know that, okay, this is what it's, this is its host name. So it's a very important, it's a core part of what we do. But DNS is an important part of data collection. Now, similar to, so that's one output of the sensor. The second output is our, what we call, it fits into host IP observations, but what the sensor is doing is it's decoding, let me just reset my query here. It's decoding DHCP queries. So if a client or device on a network sends a DNS query, or not DNS, a DHCP request, the sensor picks up on that and captures the metadata, like the asset, what was the action, what was the IP address, what was the status, and it stores this. And again, this is critical for our IDR because we want to know what the name of all these assets are, whether they're managed or IoT or whatever they are. We want to know what the asset name is. So the sensor, one of the sensor's roles is to complement what we're doing with DHCP log data capture. So it's just an extra data source here within host IP observations. And for most of the time, customers don't actually go in here querying that. That's used in other reports where we show host names. Now, I'm going to go out of log search for a second. The third output, I kind of touched on it earlier. The third output of the sensor is our intrusion detection engine. And the main way customers consume that data is when they log on to IDR, you've got your alert pipeline up here. How many problems or major problems have you on the network? Since I last checked, I've got one new alert. So I go in here and I get a list of all my, what's being triggered on my network. And some of these alerts are, done through maybe looking at data from an agent, but the sensor also feeds this. And in this case here, we've triggered an alert to say ET malware, Locky, somebody's queried a domain known to be associated with Locky. And if I go into evidence here, I can actually, well, firstly, again, we try to be a bit different. We have a very, it's curated IDS list we have behind the scenes, so customers don't get a whole bunch of false positives. And then when they do their investigations, they've got an introduction here. So not something in isolation, an introduction to what you're looking at. This is the IDS signature that has been used in this case. And this is the actual match from the network. So what we're looking for here is a particular command and control, and it's looking for, looks like a domain name here, DNS lookup. And this is the match from the network, which shows that domain name. But earlier I mentioned that we're capturing DHCP data, we're capturing DNS. So what you get here is a blend, not just the fact that you have an IDS alert, but the asset, the user, the domain, the other kind of user and asset metadata that we're capturing from logs and other sources. So this is useful. But another thing we can then do from here is, okay, this source address here has been infected, it looks like, or certainly there's an indicator here that there's ransomware activity on it. So what I can then do is go back here to the investigation, click on Explore Contextual Data, and search logs, because we can then start add additional information to this investigation. And the fourth output of the sensor becomes very useful here. It's network flow. And if I select that, I can then start to run a query here So I want to know what network flows do we know to be associated with this host. So I put in the IP, and it shows me all of the network flows. Now, probably not the greatest place to look. We'll go back to log search. It's a better way to look at this. But what we're showing here is for that particular workstation, all of the connections it's making around their network. So we could decide then, okay, this particular client, I want to add a bunch of these actual flow records to that investigation. So not only have I got the intrusion detection record, but I also now have additional kind of metadata or more context to say that this client is also connecting to a bunch of other machines in my network. So I can add this network flow data to my IDS investigation. So in summary, on this component of the sensor, it's running intrusion detection. It's not just sending a bunch of alerts. There's attribution done. There's some context given as to what this signature is. And when you're in your investigation, then you can start adding more data, which might help analysts, because you may have a case where you'll pass this investigation on to somebody else. And if so, when they open it up, they'll have your additional information, maybe extra comments, and the original alert itself. So intrusion detection, important part of the sensor. I heard from somebody today, actually, was it yesterday, in one customer network, the intrusion detection engine was sometime this week, it discovered pretty bad ransomware. Well, thankfully hadn't got bad, but we have caught it very early on, a client which had become infected, but it was contained very quickly. I think customer was really impressed that that problem was found so quickly on their network. So some people say intrusion detection, is that not a bit old? No, it's still a very good thing to have, especially if you are using a good rule set behind the scenes. You're not going to end up with like thousands of false positives. So next part, I just want to come back to network flows, because it's probably one of the most interesting outputs of the inside network sensor. So what we do is we're not sending every packet of data into the platform. We would swamp internet connections trying to do that. The amount of storage would be crazy. What we do, and let me give you an example of what one of our flow records looks like. Let me just reset my query here. And I'm going to go for a simple query. So we're going to go look at, for example, RDP. So in our search here, come back out a bit of time. In our search here, if you go for the simple mode, you can just type in, text strings, IP addresses. You don't need to know the query language. So I'm searching for RDP, Remote Desktop Protocol. So this is what one of our network flow records looks like. Now, again, it's a blend, because what you have here, you got the time when this network flow record was observed on the network, what direction it was, IP information, we got the user, the asset name. So this is done through Active Directory integration, and we looked earlier like DHCP, DNS, port information. But the crucial, what matched my search here is the fact that this is RDP. So the sensor is application aware. It's not guessing that because this is 3389 that this is RDP. It analyzes the packet payloads, and it's okay, this particular transaction here, based on what's being transferred in the payload, is remote desktop protocol. So it's fingerprinting what applications are in use on the network. Super important if you're monitoring things like your edge, because just because something says it's port 80 doesn't mean it's HTTP. It could be anything, it could be BitTorrent. So we will correctly identify what is the actual network protocol in use here. And we also have how many bytes sent and received. So from a sensor, it's like a CCTV camera 24/7. It's always on, a constant feed of who's connecting to what in your network, depending on where your sensors are placed. Now then we can start to get creative with searches. So for example, let me go into, let's reset this and go into advanced mode. By the way, there's a whole library of these queries. I'll show you when we take a look at dashboard shortly. But we've got a whole built-in library of these to help you get started. But what I'm going to do here is search all of these network flows and start grouping them together. So what you're looking at here is I'm saying, okay, where the direction's outbound. So what data is leaving my network? And then group it by user and what applications they're using. So Jimmy here is sending a lot of data out of my network. And if I hit the drop down, I can see what applications they're using to do that. So they're using Dropbox. They must be uploading a video to Amazon. They're using Skype to transfer data. Justin here is using some encrypting and also is using Dropbox. So I'm still in search, but it's gone all like it's very visual now. If I wanted to see the actual transactions with Dropbox, I can click at it here and I can get the actual network flows where Dropbox was used. So it's using SSL, TLS 1.2, and the organization name is Dropbox. So even with encryption, we can still break it down a bit into what type of protocols are being used and what's the name of the organization, the other side. We're not doing a reverse IP lookup. We're actually analyzing the traffic and watching out for kind of human readable metadata, such as organization ID or organization. That would be seen when the SSL connection was being established. So that's one way we could say, okay, show me one of my top users exporting data out of the network. Other ways we could, let me just grab another query here and show you. I could as well just type in the username and I'd see everything associated with them. Here we've got, I'm looking here at, okay, this is the opposite. What are users pulling into my network? So we're saying, okay, directions inbound and group it by user and also show and group it by what applications are using. So Justin here is using RDP. So there's RDP coming into the network, hitting Justin's system. And we can, okay, well, RDP into the network, that's not good. Let's take a look at the data behind that. So it's inbound connection to Justin's system from an IP address registered in the US. And it's okay, that's interesting. On a lot of networks that would not allow RDP. So that's all well and good. You ran a query, but I don't want to be running queries 24/7. So if you're in our search here and you're analyzing your data and you're grouping it, and maybe you spot something suspicious, as soon as you do, you can hit the option here to add an alert. So we can just pattern detection. We'll call this inbound RDP. Next. This should be selected automatically, yeah, network flow, because it's coming from that. And now we've got our query, but I've got destination user. I don't really care about the user. I want an alert if any RDP is coming into my network. I can go next. I can put a label on it if needed. I'd say this is, yeah, we'll put this as a warning here. That's optional, by the way. And then we can create that alert. So what happens now, if we have inbound RDP, that will now feed my alert pipeline here. So not only we get IDS and all the other inbuilt alerts, but now you're also going to get your own custom alerts feeding in here as well. One last, I just want to quickly go back to query. This is especially finding these reports useful as customers start deploying sensors into cloud networks, which is looking at the GeoIP aspect of our flow records. So let me run this one here. So this is just telling me, okay, where the direction's inbound, and I want to increase out here for a couple hours. Where the direction's inbound, we want to group it by what countries are connecting to my network inbound. So in my case here, we 2 countries, IP addresses registered in 2 countries are connecting to my network. And then we can start to see, well, what applications are users in those countries using to connect to my network. Remote desktop protocol, and somebody's also using file share. And this is an interesting one. I'm working with a couple of customers at the moment who are interested in kind of developing more alerting. And we're finding actually these two protocols, RDP and SMB, the number of customers that we're doing the work with, 2/3 of them, unbeknownst to them, had activity inbound on these applications. It was a small amount. It was, in most cases, it was just a 1 or 2 clients on their network, but that could have become a bigger problem. I mean, they're both really poor to leave open at the edge, especially inbound. So yeah, they were kind of glad they were working with us around that. So these will become alerts for all customers we can build in. And it doesn't matter what ports, if somebody's using RDP on port 80, you still can get alerted on that. Connections from the UK, somebody's connecting inbound using SQL. And again, I can click on that. And I can see here the fact that they're connecting to our payroll server. So that's bad, and we could add an alert. If anybody connects inbound using SQL, we could have an alert on that as well. So when you see these flow records first, yeah, there's quite a few fields in here, everything from community ID to direction. But yeah, you can do some really nice, I can group it by, let's say, group it by country name, and we can add that to the query and run that again and start grouping our data then by United Kingdom, where I think I must have another filter here. Oh yeah, we're SQL. So lots of nice things you can do in log search. But then when we launched the sensor first, customer says, yeah, this is cool. I like seeing my data here now, but could you help us with the visualizations? You guys probably know network data better than anybody. You show me how I can put a dashboard together, maybe something management friendly that they can put up on the wall and show this is what's happening on our network, or different reasons people they want a dashboard. So we have within IDR, we have the ability here to create dashboards. And like, for example, with the inside network sensor, this is a very popular dashboard, which is show me all activity at my network perimeter. Here we have top inbound applications, outbound applications, a lot of data leaving the network right now using Dropbox. Who are the most active clients connecting inbound? Who are the most active exporting data? So this workstation here is probably responsible for the Dropbox. What ports are open on our firewall? Top countries connecting, or well, this is more than countries. These are the organizations, mostly ISPs, but these are organizations connecting to the network, and what countries are connecting inbound, and so on. So it's very easy to build a view like this, because what we've done is we have a card library here where customers can say, okay, I want to create a dashboard which focuses on, let's go and forget about north-south. Some customers might have that covered already with firewall logs. What about internal activity? So we have a whole bunch of visualizations here which look at what's happening inside the network, or some people refer to this as east-west. So you could say, what are the top applications running? What are the most active systems internally? Give me a graph of the total traffic we're analyzing internally on the network, and who are the top users. Don't want to mess with this dashboard. I think I already have an internal one set up. Yeah. And what I did to build this dashboard, I simply went into the library, selected them cards I just showed you, and saved it. So I got my most active internal systems, top users. What are the most active internal applications? Total amount of network traffic, ports in use, and so on. So yeah, easy build a dashboard. Now, of course, we're never done with this. Talked to customers about this again recently. I said, yeah, like the idea, but could you have an option to add dashboard and actually download the entire dashboard? Interesting feature request, something needs discussed. See, could we possibly get that onto our roadmap, ability to download that? So yeah, always listen to customers. But dashboard seems still so popular. With the launch of cloud sensors, we'd probably have a whole new library of cards to focus on data within cloud networks. Because there's some nuances there, slightly different than you would get on a traditional within a traditional data center. So that's they're the main features. So in summary, the inside network sensor, it's a data source for the Rapid7 platform. And the first consumer is inside IDR. We are going to extend the reach of the sensor in time into other products, because there's other products such as inside VM, which would be super interested in device discovery. I think it's a very interesting area using traffic analysis to find out, the type of devices connected to your network, or if it's a printer, if it's a IoT device or whatever it is, and start feeding inventory into a vulnerability management system. So the sensor is a very important data source, and with the ability now to deploy in the cloud, it's kind of future proofing and kind of helping us build on our kind of cloud centric approach. Let me see, is there anything else on alerts? Yeah, so I don't know, have we, I'll just pause for a second and just see, have we got any questions from the audience?
If anybody have any questions, feel free to start typing it in, and we'll talk it out.
Yeah, very much. Bonus is on that.
So far, nothing. So you can go on ahead.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So let me just back into log search here again. Yeah. So a couple other fields. Well, I want to talk about here, which is a field we've recently added, and it may certainly may be of interest to customers with pulling in firewall logs. Something new we've added is a community ID field in here. Just want to explain what that is, because it's probably the least readable field. I mean, everything else, like from IP addresses to application names, all very readable, except this guy. This is actually a blend of source, destination ports, IP addresses. It's used to link, well, it can be used to link this data to firewall logs, other sources of network traffic on a network. So yeah, you can, if there's a particular type of transaction on your network that you want to follow. So if, for example, a firewall has reported that this machine has tried to do something and it was blocked, and you want to figure out, okay, where did that particular query come from? You can paste it into search, or in my case here, I can just query this pattern and find, is there any other instances where we see that particular flow record? And here they all are. Here we can go right from that session started and follow it through and see how much data was sent and received, and when was the last time we saw a transaction associated with that network flow. So I do get asked about that sometimes. It just looks, well, what's that? Is that an error? No, it's I think it's actually an MD5 hash. So very, very useful for following a very specific flow through a network, when it was established, when it was last seen, how much data was transferred, what was the application in use. So yeah, just want to mention that because it's a question I do get asked occasionally. Let me just see. Yeah, so that's I think that covers main aspects of my demo. Maybe just some quickly on some things we're working on. The main one, which I've already touched upon, is the ability to deploy sensors in more and more different types of networks. This is really ramped up because with the work from home and the changes in the way it changes in the workplace, more and more infrastructure being moved to the cloud. And while there are options in there to capture flow records, customers are telling us they really see value in having intrusion detection in the cloud, but also being application aware. So not only show me port numbers, but customers telling us we like the sensor, might be a little bit more setting up initially, because you've set up a mirror and you have to, get your sensor in place and install the software. Not a huge job, but still more than just switching on flow. But it's worth it because you have application awareness, you have the attribution we do. It's just better quality data. There's a bit more context than just there's an IP address. So certainly on our roadmap, we're increasing the options or the networks where you can drop a sensor. We want people to be able to drop a sensor into any network where they have important or critical servers and applications. The other piece of feedback got recently and we're working on is that for certain protocols, people want a deeper dive. So today with like DNS, we see the queries, what am I querying, but we don't really do much replies. So we're going to do some work around that. It's an interesting area. And then with encryption, the more we can do, the better, because there's just a lot more of us in today's world. Yes, so I don't know if I'm looking at the same chat panel. I haven't seen any question here just yet.
No, thus far we don't have any. But you mentioned encryption. I know the last person was talking about how we should just encrypt. If it's going on the web, period, everything should be encrypted.
Yeah.
How feasible is that, considering time constraints, things of that nature?
Yeah, a lot of networks I work on now, when we look at the traffic, especially traffic at the edge, there's at least 90% of it encrypted. There's always going to be a small amount of traffic. Like in today's world, we haven't got to a point yet where all DNS traffic is being encrypted. There's still a lot of it still over UDP port 53. And there's other management protocols, whether it's network time protocol and others. They haven't moved to a place yet where those transactions are encrypted. So there's still a percentage there. A lot of the user applications, whether it's anything, cloud-based SaaS, or if you're watching YouTube or whatever, all of those are encrypted. Now we can, for example, if I go back into log search, we're not completely blind to that. If let's say, when I'm in advanced, let me move here to simple query again. Let's say, okay, is anybody using Facebook? And to be honest, product's not used for this, but just for the purpose of this demo. I don't have Facebook on this, but I do have. I think I do have some Skype. Yeah. So Microsoft would advertise this as end-to-end encryption, but we can still reveal that there is somebody using Skype in this network. It's using SSL over TLS 1.2. So some might say, yeah, we definitely should move to encryption, absolutely, and more and more, especially the critical applications are already there. But then, does that mean that we don't know what's happening on our networks anymore? No, there's still certain information when it comes to just monitoring traffic. You can still reveal a lot about what's happening. And then, another area, which it's a topic in itself, is the area of decryption. Complicated because you cannot, and let's say in the US, you put a decryption device into a network, you cannot just sit back and decrypt everything, because if somebody's accessing their healthcare, portal online, or they're logged onto their bank, you can't decrypt that. You have to whitelist that type of activity. So you need a person almost to manage the decryption, and it's very expensive and very resource intensive, and actually can slow down firewalls because it's just so resource intensive. So it's a complex area. I think encryption is it's still increasing. The traffic, the amount of traffic that gets encrypted is increasing. There's some traffic that it's really hard to encrypt, like the traditional kind of management protocols. But at the end of the day, whatever tools we're using has to deal with that. And when we develop the sensor, we spend quite a bit of time on encrypted protocols to give customers some visibility into what's happening on their networks.
Okay, sounds good. So do we have anyone else that has any questions?
Yeah, on my end, I could probably finish on if you know, if there's people watching this recording, or you think of maybe somebody that's on the call that maybe they think of a question afterwards. You know, curious about this. You can go to our website, rapid7.com. You can, if you want to take a look at the sensor, be sure you focus in on the Inside IDR product, because we do have a range of products. Inside IDR, check that product out, and when you have it running, you have an option in here for your sensor management. So you can download the sensor and try it out yourself. That's all available, you know, through our website. You don't have to come to us looking for special software. It's all available via the Inside IDR product. So that's everything from my side. So thanks everybody for listening in. Hope you found that useful.
Okay, well, we'd like to thank Dara for his contribution to this conference. It's definitely been informative and opened my eyes to a lot of things. Just don't forget, there's still going to be a raffle at the end. You can also go into our lounge area and meet up with some of the panelists and have conversations there offline if you like. Other than that, if there's not anything else, we'll go ahead and end this session for right now. Dara, that good for you?
That's good with me, and thanks very much yourself for hosting the call. Much appreciated.
All right, sir. Well, thank you. All right, you have a great day and enjoy the rest of the conference, okay?